Well, hello again. I'm Andrew Marquez, and this is the Baptist on the Bible podcast. Here is your 7 at 7 devotion, a 7-minute encouragement from the Scripture offered every Monday and Friday at 7 a.m. And today we're continuing our series from 1 Peter chapter 2 called Submission, Our Wise Witness. And today we're zeroing in on verses 18 through 20. We've looked at how God has called us to submit to the Lord Himself, and in that freedom we have, knowing that we are God's subjects, we are then called to submit to the governing authorities, and that this is somehow going to promote our witness and the witness of the Lordship of Christ in the world. And today we're going to zero in further as we come down from God's realm to the human realm into our very personal relationship with those in authority over us. And this would be, in our context of America today, our employer, or perhaps if you're in the military or the services and you find yourself in ranks, those that are in superior authority over you in that way. And I think this is really how it applies to us in our world. So let's go ahead and read these verses and talk more about it. Beginning at verse 18, it says, "Servants, be submissive to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and the gentle, but also to the harsh. For this is commendable, if because of conscience toward God one endures grief, suffering wrongfully. For what credit is it if, when you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently? But when you do good and suffer, if you take it patiently, this is commendable before God." This is very countercultural language that we see here. Some of this might shock you, and you'd say, well, wait, how can the Bible endorse such things and talk about beating slaves and those types of things? Well, again, this is written in the context of the first century where there was slavery and where there was permission granted to beat your slaves and punish your slaves for poor work. Today we have a lot of protections in place. Of course, we don't have slavery in America in the sense that we did once upon a time, but we do find ourselves sometimes under authority, and we find ourselves slaves to our masters or servants to our employers. And while we have certain protections under the law, we also find that we can be punished in our workplace. We can have our pay deducted, we can be put on leave, we can be terminated. And we can also find that sometimes in your work environment, you will be treated harshly for no reason. And for those of you doing a good job, if you are treated poorly, what Peter's telling us here is that God will look kindly upon your response if that response is one of submission, recognizing again that God is the ultimate authority. And this is a justice issue. Today we're talking a lot about social justice and how all the world systems are working together either to promote justice or to deny justice. But what we have to remember as Christians is we're going to do our very best to see justice shine through in our world today, but we recognize that it doesn't always work out that way, and that's okay for the believer because our holy judge, Jesus, will someday set things right. And if we somehow experience injustice in our own lives against us, what we see from Peter is that something in the justice of God, in the very nature of God, means that He must set that right. And so what is said here, if you suffer wrongfully and take it patiently, it is a credit to you. It's commendable before God. And it is kind of amazing, and the next time we'll talk about how it actually connects us to Jesus. But what you recognize is if God is obligated to be just, when His people are treated unjustly, this is going to advance the grace shown to them later, maybe in eternity, because God will set right the wrongs. And so when I am experiencing poor treatment, I don't have to create a scene, quit, attack, fight back. What I can do is patiently show the love of Christ to my employer, to those in authority over me, to endure punishment even if it is not appropriate to me, recognizing that my attitude of submission to God, giving me liberty to submit to the laws of the land, and now giving me the freedom to submit to my employer, whether they're a good employer or a bad employer, that attitude will result in God's blessing. And it is so counterintuitive, but what happens is this is our subtle witness. Again, this is our way of changing the world carefully in a way that the world does not expect. And when we act as Jesus acted, we will transform the world like Jesus did. So submit to your employer, whether good or bad. Hopefully you have good employers. And if you're in authority, this also makes you recognize, again, how am I treating those underneath me? And there's other passages that really single out the employers or the masters. Today, though, we're focused on being the subject in the situation. There's a great line, and I think, again, if you look at the Bible, you'll find that Jesus commends, again, those that recognize their own authority and those that honor the authority structure. I found this great poem. I don't know who wrote it, but it says, "Where our captain bids us go, 'tis not ours to murmur, no. He that gives the sword and shield chooses too the battlefield. We are to fight the foe." And having that attitude as one under authority, and one in God's army, we will go and we will do what we are called to do, recognizing that while we may be called to fight the wrong battles or to engage, maybe be treated poorly, God will set it right. And of course, we don't violate conscience. Again, all of this fits together when we submit to God first. So if we're called to do something immoral or unethical, we don't do that because that would violate our submission to God. But most of the time, again, we're just called to do things maybe we don't like. Maybe it's my turn to clean the bathrooms or something. I'll do that happily because I serve Christ and I honor my employer. We endure suffering because it will merit God's favor. Not that he owes us, but in a sense, God's sense of justice will respond to our mistreatment in a way with added grace. And so we aren't doing this to manipulate God. It's just an added benefit of knowing that serving a holy and righteous and just God means that God is not going to let our mistreatment go. He is going to do what it takes to make it right. And of course, he made it ultimately right through the work of Jesus Christ, who, when I've done wrong, paid the price that I should have had to pay and died the death that I owed so that I could have the forgiveness that I didn't deserve. And so again, we live as people that have received grace, and we are people who show mercy even when we are mistreated, recognizing that our greater reward will come when the judge comes himself. I hope you're blessed and encouraged. Have a great and wonderful day.